Hey there, welcome back to Let's Figure This Life Out Together. How are you doing? How have you been? It's been a couple of months and it's been a very busy time of my life. I initially thought I would keep pushing and do YouTube videos while doing everything that I was doing. Then I realized I was in denial. So I took an unplanned break and I'm back.
We're just everyday people trying to make a difference. We want to know we got it right. We gotta know our purpose, gotta know it's worth it. We want to live a good life. We're just everyday.
Today I want to talk about some of the things that have been going on in my life, and the main thing is I moved back home. If you don't know, I've been a student in the US. I was there for 4 years, and when I finished, I decided to move back home. So right now I'm in Kigali. As promised, I want to share my journey from my decision making when I was still in the US to moving back, why I moved back, what is my experience moving back. I want to share that because when I was going through my decision making process, I couldn't find someone I could refer to. When you're making a hard decision, when you're making an unpopular decision or taking kind of an unpopular route, there is usually doubt, there is fear, and you want to hear a story of someone who is in the same space you're in. You want to hear a story of someone who has experienced what you've experienced. So I'm making this because I would like to put my story out there for someone that might need it the way I needed it at that moment. I'm gonna split this story in, we'll see how many parts those are, but I know I can't tell it all in one video. So today what I'm gonna share is why I moved back. Moving to the US, I had spent 4 years in Rwanda, and previously before that, I had almost spent my entire life in another country. And I don't know if you are familiar with the term third culture kid. I am a third culture kid. And a third culture kid is a kid who has grown up in a country that is different from their parents' origin, let's say. So I spent most of my time in Uganda, and the one thing that I would say I struggled with for the most part is I never felt like I belonged, because I knew this was not my home country, and people could tell. They could tell from my name, they could tell from how I look, they could tell from a lot of things. And sometimes people would continuously point out that I'm a foreigner, and sometimes some of the statements that were made were a little bit hurtful, but I don't want to make it a negative experience. It was a good experience. I got very good education there. I met great friends. I learned a lot of things there. And when I was done with my O-level, we moved to Rwanda with my entire family. And I attended my S4, S5, and S6 in Rwanda. And the experience that people never talk about is how you feel like you're a foreigner in your own country. There's this term of umugande, like people would use that word on me because of my accent, because I didn't speak Kinyarwanda fluently. So I was, for a very long time, I was insecure about even speaking Kinyarwanda. I was very, very insecure, that to an extent that some people thought I didn't know it, but we grew up speaking it at home. So I knew how to speak it. It's just that when you grow up in a different country, there's different vocabulary, and your accent is also affected by where you're staying, so it was very visible. I struggled a lot with my identity as a person because I had a mixture of cultures, and I wasn't very well conversant with my own culture. So I just felt like I belonged everywhere, but I didn't belong anywhere. I don't know if that makes sense. Well, after high school, gap year, then I moved to the US for college. And when I moved there, it felt freeing because the only label I had was an international student at that moment. And I didn't have people pointing out or labeling me as not Rwandan. I was in a big Rwandan community. People would, point that out sometimes, but we were all in this big bubble of now we're all international students, and this thing brings us together. In that moment, I felt free until I started to feel like I was almost an imposter. I don't know how to call it. When I was in the US, that is the time that I felt like a Rwandan, because every time that people would ask me, where do you come from? Yeah, I'm Rwandan. I come from Rwanda. That was like the automatic response until they started asking things about Rwanda. The moment that I started to speak about Rwanda, I would realize there's so much I don't know. And I decided that I was going to learn. Very fortunately, I had friends who often made fun of me, made fun of my accent, made fun of some of the things that I didn't know, but then they were very educative. Guys, if I tell you, I learned so much about my culture while in the US, you would be shocked, but that is true. More than any other time, I learned about my culture in the US, and I have my friends to thank for that. I asked questions about the country's history. They would say words, they would say like imigani. I was never ashamed to ask them, what do you mean? I didn't understand that. What do you mean? So in those times, I really felt like I was not only learning about my own culture, but also myself. It was a time for self-discovery, both from my cultural perspective and my personal life. Whew. It makes me emotional sometimes talking about this, because identity is a big thing. It's like a big thing, because for a moment I got so frustrated that I decided I was not part of any culture. And I decided I'm gonna have my own set of values, and these values are gonna define me, because I literally can't fit anywhere. It's shocking because as a third culture kid, one of the things that you learn is you adapt very quickly to new environments. You adapt very quickly. You fit in so well. Like, you would go to a new place and people would think you have been there for like, I don't know how many years. That's a skill that you unknowingly develop from staying in different places. And on the outside, it would look like I fit in so well. I know everything that's going on and all that. But in the inside, I knew that I questioned who I am. When I realized that, I took all that time to like talk to my friends and learn from them and ask questions. I'm so grateful that I got that opportunity to like have constant interactions with my people. With the experience being in Rwanda and being in Uganda and being in the US as well, you learn different things. You take on different cultural values. You are not identified by just one culture. I'm Rwandan, but I know that I have adopted some Ugandan cultural values. I know that I've also adopted some US values, cultural values, and I can't put myself in just one box, because all these different experiences make who I am. They make me who I am. I took a leadership class that helped me realize that while I was trying to put myself in one culture and say this is what my culture is, this is where I come from, and that's it, I was reminded that I cannot let go of these things that make me who I am. And these different things and experiences, that's where my values come from. And that for me was a moment of acceptance. For a very long time, I was insecure about mentioning that I grew up in Uganda because I did not want to be called a foreigner. I had been called a foreigner while I was not in my own country. I did not want my people to call me that. So for the longest time, I tried to hide my accent. I tried to not talk about it, but it was very visible. Sometimes I would just speak and people would just tell. And for me, that was a point of insecurity. That is something I'm still working on, embracing who I am and my culture, this collective culture. Maybe we'll dive into that one day and I'll talk about it, especially for people who have grown up in different countries and are struggling with finding who they are. But moving forward, my experience in the US was great. I grew a lot. There was so much self-awareness. There were meaningful connections that I made. And while I really appreciated being in the US and everything that the US taught me, there's one thing that I realized was not mine, and that was the individualistic culture. It just didn't serve me. I feel like the more developed a country becomes, it becomes very individualistic. It moves away from being communal and being a community to everybody just working hard and struggling to keep themselves alive, and all of those things I see and I understand where the culture comes from. But as a person, it wasn't mine. I thought about it and I realized I do not want to live another year here when I'm done graduating. It took me some time to realize that. It took me prayer, it took me soul searching for me to understand that this wasn't my thing. The other thing is the weather. Guys, so there's something called seasonal depression, and it's a thing because during the winter you're not having enough sunshine. When you don't get exposure to the sun, that means you don't have enough vitamin D. That affects your mood. You're not having enough human interaction. That affects your mood too, because as humans we are social beings. That's how God has created us. And when you don't have the interaction with people as you should, it does affect your mental health. It's cold outside, everybody's just rushing to go to their home, rushing to go into a building or something. You realize that people are just unhappy during that time. And I would see every single season of winter, I hated it so much. I was like, no, I just can't do this. I just can't do this. The other reason I moved back was because I wanted to immerse myself in my culture. I wanted to fully experience living in Rwanda because in the 4 years that I was here, I was in high school, and then it was just 1 year out of high school. And when you're in school, there are things you just don't experience. I wanted to be able to visit different places in Rwanda and learn about so much that I didn't get a chance or the privilege to learn when I was younger. Yeah, I just wanted to have that experience, how it feels like living as an adult in Rwanda on a day-to-day basis. What is it like interacting with people, making your own decisions? I wanted to have that full experience because I know that for me, that's part of discovering who I am, and also, picking up some of those values that actually mean so much to the Rwandan community. And yeah, that is one of the things I was super excited for. And yeah, I'm already experiencing it. The other thing was what success looked like for me. And this is why it's important for you to have an understanding of who you are, what you want, and what gives your life meaning. It's important that you make that search and understand what that looks like for you. And I know there's so much that the world says about success and how they define success, but each one of us has their own definition. So when you look at the US, it's a very convenient country. In my definition, it's a very, it has so much convenience, but for me, it has a very low quality of life. Why do I say this? For me, quality of life is defined by being able to do meaningful things, communal relationships, eat healthy, like have fresh air and all these things. It's not just about money. For me, that's how I define quality of life. So I knew for sure that I did not want to live a life of just having a 9-to-5 job. When you're done with college, you're all moving to different places, different locations, and you could find yourself in a place where it's just you and yourself. And even the friendships that you create with Americans are not the same as those from, I would say, people from your continent or something, because again, that individualistic thing kicks in. And I'm not saying these people are bad people. I'm just saying that their culture, the culture there just doesn't work for me. Like, it's just not what I want my life to look like. The other very important reason is I knew in my spirit that God wasn't calling me to stay in the US. And I can't explain this in a way that makes sense, but I knew. I just knew very clearly that at least in this moment, this season, I was not being called to stay in the US. And I really had to make the decision that is good for me. I will say it was a scary decision to take, very scary. I remember the day that I got to the realization that I wanted to move. That was like a semester before my graduation, I think. The idea of coming back and picturing the kind of life I would be living was I felt as though it was a very fulfilling life. I felt very peaceful instantly. I felt like it was the right thing to do. In that same moment, I remember breaking down and crying for like 30 minutes straight. And I think for me in that moment is I was grieving the meaningful relationships I had made, and I'm not saying that I was gonna lose them, but I was gonna be away from those people. This is the place that I had built my identity. I'd known who I am, I'd grown, I'd done so much, and I was living in this place, and I didn't know what was awaiting for me. Even though I had so much peace, I didn't know what was coming, and it was so scary. It took me a while to tell my friends because I didn't know how to say it, and I took time to process it. I do remember preparing myself mentally. That's a very important thing. If you're planning to move back, please do not ignore your feelings. Do not ignore some of the emotions that you have to work through, because they're gonna hit you on the very day you leave, and it's gonna be bad. The thing that helped me is I took time to adjust mentally and adjust that I was gonna be away, and tell my friends what my thoughts are, what was going through my mind, and all these things. Like, I had time to talk to them, and then towards the end, I was actually excited and looking forward to coming. I had gone through those emotions, I had processed the emotions, and I'd adjusted mentally, and I was now ready to go. one of the hardest things for me was the relationships I'd created. And the reason why that's hard is, as a third culture kid, you learn that your home is not like a place. Your home is where people that matter to you are. When you're leaving such places, it doesn't hurt leaving the place physically. It hurts because your home are those people that are meaningful to you, that you're leaving behind. And I had gone through this when my family moved from Uganda and was moving. I remember saying bye to my friends, and guys, it was bad. It was bad. It took me months to recover from this. And my biggest fear in that moment was that this is happening again. This didn't happen to me when I was living in Rwanda because I knew I was coming back. It was different. Well, it happened, but I knew I was coming back. It's different when you know you're leaving this place almost for good, like you have no ties there. It's different because the pain. I do remember my friends drove me to the airport and they helped me check in my bags and everything. They were so helpful. And I remember when I was taking the stairs to go take my flight, that's where it hit me. I tried to hold back my tears, and I got on the plane and I broke down, guys. I realized I was leaving and I didn't know when I was gonna come back to see these people. Whew, the emotions, it was hard. I would say I'm still processing that because these are the people I've built a life with for 4 years, and it's hard to do this life and get into this adulthood and not having these people that you have built this kind of life with. Yeah, I will not hide my emotions because I want whoever that might experience this to know that it's okay and it's normal. You can literally make the best decision for your life and still be heartbroken by what you're letting go. I'm not saying I'm letting go of my friends, but there are certain experiences I can't have with them while I'm here. So it's okay, it's okay. Just because you feel sad doesn't mean that you're making the wrong decision. You could have it. The right decision is gonna bring you peace, but it's not comfortable. It's not. So that was my journey, moving from the US and coming back. And I'll be sharing with you part 2 of what it has been like being here. This was a hard video to make, but I'm glad that I made it, and I hope that it helps someone out there that might need it in the future. And please make sure to share this video with anybody that you know might need it. Make sure to give it a like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in part 2 of this video. Thank you so much. I'll be answering in the next video. I'll be answering questions, some of the questions that I've not answered in this video, and I'll make sure to go into the details of those. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, have a good day or have a good night, whatever time zone you're in. I love you all. Bye.